I call the Assistant Minister to the Treasurer.
Well, thanks, Mr Deputy Speaker. Now, what an extraordinary MPI. Can I say to the Shadow Treasurer, yes, we have very different priorities on tax than you. Yes, we are not the party of higher taxing, higher spending and bigger deficits. We are not the party that believes that people who are earning $87,001 should be treated as millionaires, as these litany of ridiculous questions in question time prove. We don't believe that small businesses with a turnover between $2 and $10 million should be taxed and treated like Google or Apple. So every time they talk about multinational tax with reference to small businesses between $2 and $10 million of turnover, no, we don't believe that they should be treated like Apple and Google. So yes, we have very different priorities on tax. And I say to the Shadow Treasurer, the failed former Immigration Minister, the failed former Treasurer with his Bowen's black hole of $18 billion, go to the next election, with a commitment to raise personal income taxes and make those justifications, make those arguments. Keep arguing the fact that 49.5% is apparently a very low and very generous tax rate bestowed on Australian income earners by the Shadow Treasurer. You keep making those arguments. We are the party of small business. We are the party of lower taxes. So yes, our priorities are very different. We're also the party of integrity in our tax system. We are a party, unlike the Shadow Treasurer, who will impose the bank levy, which will raise $6.2 billion over the forward estimates. And no matter how many ridiculous arguments that the Shadow Treasurer raises, will raise that money, and the attacks on Treasury in that respect have been disgusting. But we will ensure integrity in our tax system. We will ensure that banks who enjoy a systemic place in our system, with our 4 pillars bank policy, with a regulatory regime which is really the envy of the rest of the world in a financial services context, that they pay a little bit more to contribute to budget repair. And we've got the Shadow Treasurer and the opposition leader who come in here every single day parroting the lines of the big banks. They were all hairy-chested in here for months. They were all hairy-chested in here talking about a banking royal commission. And now that we're trying to get a fair contribution, a fair additional contribution out of our large banks to assist with budget repair, to assist in guaranteeing the services that Australians deserve, we've got the Shadow Treasurer and Leader of the Opposition parroting these ridiculous lines that the big banks have presumably put them up to say in this place. Also on integrity, we believe, of course, in lower taxes, but we also don't believe in a self-help system. We think there must be integrity in our tax system, and that's why it's quite extraordinary that last year, led by the Shadow Assistant Treasurer here, the Labor Party voted against laws which improved multinational tax avoidance in this country. And just last week, or this week in fact, in Senate estimates, it was confirmed that an additional $2 billion has been raised in connection to the multinational tax avoidance legislation that the Labor Party voted against. And in Senate estimates it was confirmed that there was a direct connection between raising that money and the change in law. And we don't believe, like the Labor Party, that rhetoric trying to bash Apple and Google, so-called, in this House and voting against laws, the toughest anti-avoidance laws seen in the OECD, is consistent with that approach. So we will continue to advocate for lower taxes, but not a self-help system. Taxes where there is integrity, where every single company, from the small milk bar to Apple and Google, are paying a fair contribution of tax in this country. But the biggest disgrace of the Labor Party's approach on tax is their approach to small business, their callous disregard of small businesses. Do the Labor Party realise that there are literally tens of thousands of businesses in this country with a turnover between $2 and $10 million who should not be treated like Apple or Google or BHP Billiton or Rio Tinto. These are businesses who, for every single dollar in tax that they save, get reinvested into the business, get reinvested into employing more workers, get reinvested into increasing salaries for their workers. For so many small businesses, it's like a family. And small businesses, we've seen in recent years, have been the engine room of growth in jobs in this country. The absolute engine room of growth. So when the Labor Party and members of the Labor Party going to their electorates and walking to small businesses, go into a cafe or a small business with 1 or 2 employees and tell them that they don't deserve a tax cut. Tell them that they should be treated like some big evil multinational, so-called, as the Labor Party would say. Go into those small businesses and tell them you don't deserve access to the instant asset write-off, the $20,000 instant asset write-off, which will now be available to businesses with a turnover between $2 and $10 million. You go and tell them that they don't deserve that. Because I can tell you right now there are businesses with 1 or 2 employees who will have a turnover over $2 million. And they should apparently, according to the Labor Party, according to this shadow treasurer, should be treated like large businesses. Well, we disagree. And perhaps it's because the reason we disagree is that actually on this side of the House we've got people who have come out of small businesses. Perhaps it's because we've got people on this side of the House who have actually stumped up their own hard-earned, who have actually perhaps taken out a mortgage against their own family home to take a risk, to be entrepreneurial, to set up a small business, and they know that every single dollar of tax that they save goes to strengthen their business. And we see the benefits throughout the economy by assisting small businesses in that way. So that is perhaps the most tawdry aspect of the Labor Party approach, that they would deny tax cuts to small businesses between $2 and $10 million, not only on the headline company tax rate, but also the access to the small asset write-off. It's an absolute disgrace, and on this side of the House, I repeat, we have very different priorities from the Labor Party. Yes, we have very different priorities from the Labor Party. We don't think it's appropriate for every additional dollar that somebody earns that $1 should go to the government and $1 should go to yourself. We don't think you should work 1 day for the government and 1 day for yourself. We believe that in order to incentivise people to work harder, to strive harder, to do more, to provide for their own families, that it's not our money to tax. We don't have a God-given right to tax their money. I know the Labor Party thinks that, but we believe ultimately it is their money, and we don't want to disincentivise people from doing what they need to do to get ahead. And I won't take that interjection by the Shadow Assistant Treasurer. I will continue.
The member for Fenner will cease interjecting.
So,
otherwise,
our approach,
his colleagues will need to find the next speaker.
Excellent ruling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our approach is lower corporate income tax rates, lower taxes for small business, lower personal income tax rates, allowing small businesses to access all of the benefits that this government wants to provide them in the instant asset threshold. And importantly, we are a government that believes in integrity in our tax system. Not coming in here all hairy-chested talking about Apple and Google and then voting against the legislation. What weaklings to vote against the legislation that raised $2 billion additional dollars that we saw in Senate estimates this week was directly linked to the passage of that legislation. And it's surprising that in order to pass that legislation, the Greens showed more economic rationality than the Labor Party. But I suppose that just indicates how far to the left the Labor Party has gone. I'd say to those sensible members of the Labor Party, take back your party, because you are now the party of high personal income tax, high corporate income tax, and I'd say take that to the next election, Shadow Assistant Treasurer. Take that to the next election. Tax increases for every single Australian, and I know which way the Australian people will answer.